second part to the Black Desert Online class guide videos for 2020. Let's jump straight into this.
Sitting in the dirt, watching Steven Universe. I just wanna flirt, I don't.
Ninja is part of the assassin class in Black Desert Online. Ninja, for his succession, uses a short sword in Shuriken. For his awakening, he uses a short katana. Ninja's awakening is the worst PvE awakening in the game. I suggest using his succession for PvE usage because of high mobility and his AoE abilities in the game. In dueling with both awakening and succession, Ninja is one of the best dueling classes, or even the best dueling class in the game. In war combat, it's like dueling, where his succession and awakening are very similar in damage. In war combat, they play as you expect, being assassins. Ninja is a very difficult class to play, but the payoff is very good in PvP.
Sitting in the dirt, watching Steven Universe. I just wanna flirt, I don't.
Kunoichi is a female assassin. She uses the same types of weapons for her pre-awakening as Ninja, but for awakening, she uses the Shai chakram. Another difference between Ninja and Kunoichi is when it comes to awakening. Kunoichi's is way better in PvE than Ninja's, but for her succession, they are evenly matched. For dueling, Kunoichi is excellent class to play. Her succession and awakening, very good dueling. But in war combat, awakening Kunoichi is better. The succession, not so much. When it comes to difficulty, Ninja and Kunoichi are very similar on their level of difficulty.
Sitting in the dirt, watching Steven Universe. I just wanna flirt, I don't.
For the next class, Wizard and Witch are very similar, so I will be covering them as a pair. Wizard and Witch or casters using staffs and daggers for their pre-awakening weapons. Then they use whatever these are for their awakening weapons. Wizard and Witch play similarly in their pre-awakening states, but they're different after they get their awakening. Wizard in his awakening state uses fire and ice skills, while Witch uses earth and lightning skills. When it comes to PvE, Wizard takes it out of these two classes because his succession, Wizard can instant cast, chain skills, increase his damage potential, but Witch is still playable. In dueling, Witch and Wizard are not viable, being killed and countered easily, especially if they have a grab. But even if the class they're going against doesn't have a grab, they still aren't the best for PvP. But in war combat, because of their skill protection area, this makes them very popular for any PvP guild, even if they have a low gear score.
Sitting in the dirt, watching Steven Universe. I just wanna flirt, I don't.
Dark Knight is another caster type class. She uses a Creek Mezar and an Ornamental Knot for her pre-awakening, then switches to her Vermental for her awakening weapon. Dark Knight deals a lot of damage and has a good amount of mobility. This makes her great at PvE, but her succession is better off in that area. But dueling, she's just average, having a high damage potential, but very weak against any class with high magic attack defense, like Striker and Mystic. In war combat, she's not the best either, not doing a lot of meaningful damage you need in that setting. Dark Knight is a easy class to master, not being that difficult to pick up and learn.
Sitting in the dirt, watching Steven Universe. I just wanna flirt, I don't.
Sorceress or Medea uses an amulet and a talisman for her succession, and a scythe for her awakening. Sorceress can be strong or the worst class in the game based on gear score. I say this because she's good at dueling and war combat because of her frames. In PvE, Sorceress is also really good in PvE, her awakening being average and her succession being amazing. In war combat, she can kill groups by herself or disrupt teams. The only class she struggles against are Witch, Wizard, and Guardian because of their AoE abilities. The downside is that Sorceress is probably the hardest class to master and even play in the game.
Sitting in the dirt, watching Steven Universe. I just wanna flirt, I don't.
Shai, like Archer, doesn't have awakening state like the other classes. Instead, she gets a talent, which is equivalent to awakening. Shai uses a Florang and a Vicari for her weapons. Shai is a designated support class, having a lot of healing buffs. Even with, she does great in PvE grinding, even in high-end areas. Shai's worst setting is dueling. Any class dominates her in the setting, even if the Shai has high gear score, and that's the same for war combat. But she is still useful because of her healing and buffs. But to do that, it takes a lot of time to master. It makes Shai a hard class for PvE. Shai's best area is life skilling. So if you want a life skill class, I recommend Shai.
Sitting in the dirt, watching Steven Universe. I just wanna flirt. I don't.
Striker is a monk class of BDO. Striker uses a gauntlet and a vambrace for his succession, and uses a guard brace for his awakening weapon. The Striker has a lot of magical defense, making him very tanky. Striker starts off having high damage, but it goes down in higher grind spots, making him very average in PvE for both his awakening and succession. In war combat, he is very average, being that if he tries to brawl, he's going to get clapped very easily. That doesn't change between succession and awakening. But in dueling, he does a little better, since it's a one-on-one. Since he does a lot of high damage in the early game, I suggest him for newer players.
Sitting in the dirt, watching Steven Universe. I just wanna flirt. I don't.
Mystic on the opposite side does a lot better. She has the same pre-awakening weapons as Striker, but she uses the Kiestis for her awakening. Unlike Striker, her damage doesn't go down in higher areas of the game, making her very good in PvE. Since she still has high protection like Striker, Mystic is in the middle of not doing great or terrible in dueling. Her succession and awakening are on the same tier when it comes to that. In war combat, she is similar to Striker, doing terribly in that setting. Her awakening is a little better than her succession in that regard, but her war combat potential is still very low. If you mainly want to play her awakening, it will be very easy, but her succession will be very hard to play and master.
Sitting in the dirt, watching Steven Universe. I just wanna flirt. I don't.
Berserker is a giant who uses an axe and an ornamental knot for succession and an iron buster for awakening. Berserker's PvE ability is very high with his awakening and succession. He does get a little slower, well, because he's a giant. In dueling, Berserker succession is terrible compared with other classes. That also goes for war combat. Berserker's succession is very bad when it comes to PvP. Berserker's awakening is a lot better in PvP since it takes a lot of time to master Berserker because his kit is very complicated.
Sitting in the dirt, watching Steven Universe. I just wanna flirt. I don't.
Guardian is Black Desert's newest class added into the game, using a battle axe and a shield, then switches to a Hellbird for her awakening. With her awakening, she is the strongest PvE class in the game because of her AoE and damage output abilities. She can even outgrind classes even if they have a higher gear score. And when it comes to dueling, sometimes she can even one-shot players with one skill. On top of that, she has protection on all of her skills with a iframe, and her skills have a very good range. Because of that, her succession gets overlooked, having people mostly play her awakening. In war combat, she's always on top of the leaderboards. One downside of hers is that her movements are predictable and she can be grabbed, but honestly, not a downside because if you mess up, you're going to be killed. Guardian is the best class in the game. Thank you guys for getting to the end of the video. If you need any context for this video, go back to part 1 of the 2020 Black Desert Guide videos and I'll explain all the other classes. Also, thank you guys for all the support on the videos. You guys are amazing. And like, comment, and subscribe, do all that stuff. If you have anything to say, if I said something wrong, you really know what to do, go down in the comments and give me some help because I'm still new at this. And thank you guys for watching. Deuces.